All right, so you're thinking about making a move out here to Tacoma, Washington, and you just haven't quite decided if it's the right spot for you. I actually decided to sit down and make this video after living out here the last 3 years. We relocated our family of 7 out from Missouri all the way out here to the PNW, to the greater Tacoma area, and we've been here now right at about 3 years. So while I do a lot of like real estate type content and things along those lines, the purpose of this video is gonna be a little bit different. It's really just to share what my personal experience has been. And maybe that can help you determine, whether or not living in Tacoma, Washington makes sense for you, or if, maybe you should turn tail and run. This is gonna be a brutally honest video. It's 100% my opinion on everything. So if that's what you want to see, keep sticking around. We're getting after it right now. All right, so as we do in every single video, obviously we have people that reach out to us every day that are looking to move to the greater Seattle, Tacoma area. So if that's you, I don't care if it's in 3 days or 3 months, give us a call, shoot us a text, book a Zoom call so we can help you figure out if this is the right move for you. And if you want to know everything going on in the local market right here in the greater Tacoma, Seattle area, be sure to hit that subscribe. So a little bit about Tacoma, like geography, I think is really important. So when I flew out here the first time, I was really looking at Seattle, Bellevue. I knew Olympia. Obviously I knew about Tacoma, but like it wasn't really on my radar. And it's, I guess, what I would call like the redheaded stepsister of Seattle, but the proximity is probably one of the most appealing things about the greater Tacoma area. I love being just, 45 minutes away from Olympia, 45 minutes into Seattle. Depending on traffic, I can be in Bellevue in the east side in about an hour. And as a real estate broker, having that like centralized location is very critical for me to get wherever I've got clients that need me to get. And that was one of the big things for me moving here was I needed a spot that would put me in the middle of everything. And so I felt like Tacoma did that. Not only are you, those frames, but you're also about an hour away from Mount Rainier National Park, which is completely stunning. You can be at the ocean in about 2 hours. So that's a really nice touch. And you're 2.5 to 3 hours from Portland. So you're really just kind of all put together in that range. Now, with geography, I think like weather patterns are something to look at. I was really kind of misguided. I think when I looked at the greater Seattle area as it came to weather before I moved, I had seen, Frasier, I had seen The Ring, and I've been exposed to all these things that were supposedly Seattle. And it was always just this black sky, constant thunderstorm, heavy rain. And when I got here, I was really surprised to see that wasn't the case. I also assumed being, super far up north, there would be a lot of snow. And, out east in Washington there is, but those two things really kind of shocked me. In Missouri, I had a very, heavy, icy, snowy winter, and I had a sweltering hot summer. So the temperate climate was something that was already attractive to me. But what I've learned over time is, the rain is not heavy like the movies. It's like a mist and a drizzle, or if you want to combine them, let's call it mizzle. I think over the last 3 years, the rain has not been any form of an issue. During the winter though, like I do have to take vitamin D to kind of keep myself up and going. And that's where I think the real negative about the weather here comes into play. It's not the rain. It's definitely been the gray for me that has been the hardest part to adjust to. There are periods during the winter where it's like there is no sun for like days sometimes. You'll have light try to poke through the clouds. It doesn't really get there. And I know this year coming in with year 3, as I kind of moved through January, I was like, look, I'm ready for a vacation. And I ended up actually booking one a month later just to get out for a few days with the wife, just so we could kind of get in the sun for a few days. The first couple of years, it didn't really bother me. Like it was still pretty high on, the move and everything. But now I'm not a big fan of that gray overtone if you don't get a cut through of sun. And now as we're moving in through February, the sun is already coming out more, the days are longer. See, during that like Christmas season, the days are super short. Like you get up for work in the morning, it's already dark. And I guarantee by the time I leave my office every single day, it's dark again. So really adjusting from that like Midwest weather has been a little bit of a struggle over the last 3 years, but I figured out the solutions. We figured out like taking vitamin D, we figured taking breaks when it is sunny and nice outside to get out and take advantage of the pretty weather when we do have it. It has been a huge change. Over the last 3 years, one thing that has really whipped my ass has got to be the cost of living. See, moving from the Midwest to Washington in general, like I 4x'd my housing cost right out the gate. Went from a house where, the payment on the end was like $1,500-ish to almost $4,000 a month just for our house. The other thing that really like stood out to me originally as a big adjustment in the cost of living was fuel costs were about $1 high a gallon. Now, you really can't get around that. Like I still have to put fuel in the car, so it is what it is. Right now I'm paying like $3.90 for premium, which isn't too bad, but I've definitely paid, less out in the Midwest. Utilities are cheaper though, weirdly enough. And over the last 3 years, they have maintained that lower utility bill, and I love it. Like we only kick on our air conditioner like a few days a year. And I think this last winter we turned the heater on once or twice, but we have a nice little gas fireplace and we use that for the cold season because of that climate, that like 50 to 75, it's so temperate and easy to work through that like just don't have that struggle. One thing that did really kind of like punch us in the face, I guess you could say, is about a year after we moved here, so we'd kind of adjusted to the cost of living on the West Coast, was inflation started to run away. That was kind of scary, frankly. And the last couple of years, we've gotten more used to it. We've got groceries dialed in. With a family of 7, your grocery bill is obviously going to be really high, but we've found ways to make that work. We use Walmart Plus, so we have stuff delivered to our house, so we're not driving out all the time. We're not spending fuel. We're not spending hours during our day. Transportation costs though, that's been pretty brutal. And I don't just mean the fuel, like now changing the oil in my Challenger is like $175. It's obviously full synthetic and it could be just a run on inflation, but it feels a lot higher. Plus there's a lot of construction and a lot of development out in the area that I'm living in. And over the last 3 years, I've changed like multiple windshields. I've put new tires on 3 different vehicles because of nails and screws. And right now I actually have 2 little like dents in my personal windshield from this. Going through construction, I've cracked a rim. Transportation has been kind of rough over the past 3 years. Like I'm going to tell you, like Washington is known as one of the worst states for transportation costs, and that is completely warranted. Like this state has earned that being kind of a pain in the ass. As I work with a lot of clients that are really looking at moving out here from other areas, cost of living is something that we always discuss on our very, very first Zoom call because it's completely different. If you're coming from the Midwest like I came from, it's shockingly more expensive. But if you're from California and you move out here, like every client I've had from California feels like they're just getting this crazy deal. And I will tell you, looking at a lot of the costs, like homes, for example, are about 40% off compared to just right up the street in Seattle. So you do get a little more bang for your buck. Cost-wise, I also have really enjoyed not having a state income tax. Like putting that money back in our pockets over the past 3 years has been huge. There are people in Missouri and they can basically make like almost no money and they can have a bunch of kids with child tax credits, and the state of Missouri is still gonna somehow find a way to hit you for money and taxes. And I just love having that off my plate. I think my rate I was paying out was like 4.5% to 5% a year. So just putting 5% more money in my pocket has been pretty nice. Even though sales tax is a little bit higher, it all kind of comes out in the wash, I guess. Work out here has been awesome. Obviously, being a real estate broker, I did not have to like move my family out here and try to secure a job, but we have moved so many clients off of YouTube that I've seen people have a very easy time finding jobs. My wife, Elena, is a mortgage lender. She did change companies from her national brand to a more localized brand here in Washington. And that was just really because of the environment. People really love local here. That was a good move that we made. Obviously, rebuilding my clientele was pretty rough. I just didn't know anybody. Like our family just figuring it out as we went. Now, there are a lot of great employers out here. JBLM's a huge employer. We have multiple hospitals. There are a ton of tech jobs. The Port of Tacoma is responsible for over 100,000 jobs. SeaTac is responsible for like 85,000 jobs. There's so much stuff just within an hour of the city of Tacoma that I don't know how you couldn't find good income and good work if you were out there really trying to find it. So even my kids have found good little jobs, high school jobs paying $20+ an hour. And that blows my mind because I think I made like $5.55. Like, I'm not even that old. As I really reflect about the job situation over the last 3 years, my job is really to get to know people and build relationships with them. And I just kind of started creating my own community. And it did take me about 6 months being here to really realize the position I was in. And since then, I've done my best to make as many friends as possible, to get out, to be involved with the Chamber of Commerce, to be involved with some networking groups. Obviously, church helps. That's something that you're into. But I will tell you, like, employment or just socially, if you're going to relocate anywhere across the country, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through this move in the last 3 years is we are not very good at doing new things as adults. Like, we kind of struggle at taking on new challenges. We're kind of set in our ways. And we have our friends from high school, we have our friends from work. And when you move hundreds, if not thousands of miles away, they're gone. So you got to find new ways to connect. All right, next thing is gotta be, we've gotta talk about the quality of life. This is something that has been incredible for me and my family since we moved here 3 years ago. After about being here a year, being out hiking more, being more active, more of the fresh seafood, I found myself down about 40 pounds. Somewhat intentional, but I didn't expect it. This culture is just very healthy. It's very outdoorsy, based on a lot of fresh food, garden grown seafood, local beef from, Eastern Washington. And it's made a huge impact in our lives. We have so many activities to do, like literally from Olympia up past Seattle, there are things to do nonstop. Now, for us, we're foodies. So me and my wife go on dates and just eat out and honestly spend a lot of our money doing that. But we found like fun mini golf with the kids. We like to hike regularly. Hitting up Mount Rainier National Park is becoming like a more and more popular thing for us as we live here longer. And then we've also really started branching out. Like, there are so many really cool things within 2 to 3 hours of where we live here in Tacoma. Like I said, you can be at the ocean, you can be out in Leavenworth, which is incredible. Like, if you don't know about Leavenworth, Washington, when this video is over, I want you to go on Google, look it up. It's like a Hallmark movie meets a small German town meets a snow globe. You can't even imagine. Day trips to Seattle, going up to Bellingham, which has one of the best farmers markets around. My wife found this hot honey up there, and literally as soon as it gets low, she's like, hey, we got to start planning another trip to go to Bellingham because I need to hit the farmers market and grab my hot honey. The other thing too that I really like about Tacoma and the Tacoma area is just it's like pride in local business and acceptance of diversity. Like, I didn't really have that. Missouri is like a lot of Applebee's and Chili's and that thing. And here we have people from all over the world running all different types of businesses, all different types of restaurants, bars, breweries, like clothing stores, whatever. And you can really get a flavor of about 1 million different cultures right here in Tacoma. Everything from high-end restaurants to, taco trucks, from high-end boutiques to really cool little streetwear shops. The culture here has been awesome, and it's something that we have really loved since being here. As far as like education goes, we did look a lot at niche.com and kind of ranked some of the schools when we moved out here. And we looked at those based on also areas that kind of, I would say, fit our vibe when we moved. We ended up landing in a school district that I think we were really, really confident in. Like most people that have 5 children, there's gonna be some kind of problems at school. But overall, what we did was we found around a school district that kind of had sort of a smaller town feel to it. And, we came from a town of like 10,000 people in Missouri called Ozark, Missouri. And so we kind of wanted to replicate that. Coming out of it, we do have a daughter right now that is getting a ton of requests from major universities for track, students with straight A's. And our son actually was able to graduate a year sooner than what we expected, which is pretty crazy, just having all of that transfer over. But dealing with people that are moving here from all over the country, like, I think it's really important to spend time on websites like niche.com, reading those reviews, seeing what special programs like the schools have. The one thing I will tell you is remember that most of the time when people leave reviews, it's not because they're thrilled or happy. So you have to do some digging on your own. And then, if you're planning on making that move, when you come out here to visit, link that up with the areas that you're interested in living in, and it's going to reveal itself to you. It's going to be good. And again, with like the quality of life and the physical culture, all of my kids are in sports. I've got daughters that play soccer and tennis and track. And then Finley, my youngest, he's playing football. I do think that sports here at school are like a little bit more expensive than they were in Missouri. But again, I don't know, like inflation's ran its course. So if I were to go back to the Midwest, I don't know if it would be more expensive or if it would be roughly about the same price, if I'm being 100% honest with you. One little weird thing about schools out here though, like, and I know this is everywhere, but especially the last year, like kids have really been moving towards wearing pajamas pretty much every day. Like when we brought Finley out here and he could wear a baseball cap to school, I was like thrilled. Like I love wearing hats and I would have loved to wear a hat. And in Missouri, that is just like an absolute no. You can't wear a hat inside the building even. It's not appropriate. But a lot of kids are wearing pajamas to school, and so we do have kind of a battle inside of our household from time to time about what we believe is appropriate attire to wear out in public. Not a big fan of house slippers and flannel pants for the school day personally. So that's just my 2 cents, obviously. When it comes to transportation out here, there is public transportation options. We have buses, we have the light rail. Obviously, there's van pools and things along those lines. There's also commuter trains that go up to Seattle and come back, so you can take advantage of those. Over the past, few years, one of the things that we have really spent time figuring out is that if we take the light rail up to Seattle for like either a Mariners game or a Seahawks game or a Washington Huskies game, then we save about $90 on parking, plus don't have to fight the crazy, insane traffic. But I'm gonna be like blunt here and say that I have not seen anybody move to Tacoma that doesn't need a car. Now, I've got some clients up in Seattle that live in, very niche neighborhoods, and they don't really need a car. Like they can walk to work, they get an Orchid card, whatever. But living here in Tacoma, I'm gonna say you're still going to need your own vehicle to get around. We do have a really safe public transit. I just don't think it's really where it needs to be for you to 100% rely on that transit to get you where you need to go. Another thing we have is we do have the Washington State ferry system. So if you want to go over to, Vashon Island, if you want to leave and drive up north and go to San Juan, Anderson Island, Fox Island, like there's all these really cool options. Obviously coming from a landlocked state, I didn't have that. So the first few times it was like we were on a cruise basically, and we've gotten a little more adjusted and it's maybe not quite as exciting now for us. Transportation, there definitely is public transit. I still think you're going to need a car. If you're in your neighborhood, there's plenty of sidewalks for bikes. Downtown Tacoma and that entire area is very, very walkable. Obviously, as you head more and more south or more and more west, the walkability is gonna decrease. And if you're one of the smaller suburbs, you're not gonna have that same walkability. But if you're choosing to live in Tacoma, then I think you're probably gonna be all right. If I really was sitting here thinking about like what's one thing about transportation that just kind of, I guess, sucks, is there are some really bad traffic congestion times. Like if I leave here at 4:45, I can get home in a blink. But if I leave here at 5:01, life sucks. There are days where making the trip up to Seattle can take 1.5 hours to 2 hours, or coming home could take up to 2 hours. So you really have to learn those congestion times. Like if you're going the other way, let's say you're going south, Well, then you have JBLM traffic and the military base. So, there are points where traffic and congestion is really bad, and it's probably not going to get better. Like, the water's to the west, the mountains are to the east, and the whole area is just like a big giant town. So there's not really a lot of room to expand roads and add more lanes. And so, I've not seen it get any better in 3 years. Maybe I'll be surprised, but I would just be okay if you're not someone that works from home. I would be okay with knowing I've got to plan my day around how this traffic's going to go. Man, safety and crime. Okay. Over the last 3 years, we've not really been a victim to crime other than one incident. We were up in Seattle, so not even in Tacoma, and I had my Challenger parked in a parking lot, and I have 5% limo tint on the windows, and somebody broke out one of my windows. I thought one of my Louis Vuitton duffels had been taken in. It was actually in the back seat and it was stolen. Whether you're in Seattle, Tacoma, Jasper County, Missouri, Jackson, Mississippi, you shouldn't leave valuable stuff in your car. And that was just a miscommunication between me and my wife. But it is really on par for crime here. If you look back in the 80s, the Tacoma area was a very heavily gang ran city. Hilltop was ran by the Crips. Like, it was kind of rough, and it's been very, very much cleaned up. But like the majority of more expensive areas of the country, Tacoma, just like everywhere else, sees an increase in poverty crime, frankly. So stolen things. Like, I was in the barber shop the other day, the guy was talking about his motorcycle got stolen, and he's a firefighter. He had an air tag on it, and they went and found it in the fire engine during their shift. Amazing story. Broke it down a little too quickly. Overall, I've not been worried about a shooting or a stabbing or anything along those lines. Most events that are violent, just like I experienced in Missouri here, are people who know each other and already have violent tendencies. The one thing that does stink is I do, again, just feel like poverty crime is pretty high. And it is more centered into the city of Tacoma. If you're living out in Bonnie Lake or University Place or maybe Lacey, people have to really want to go out of their way to create problems. And as you disperse out of the city proper of Tacoma, and we do have most people end up in the suburbs, and as you experience that, as you go out further, that poverty crime heavily is decreased. One thing I will tell you about safety, crime rate, all that is I feel like in the last 3 years, Tacoma's done a really good job of working on the homeless problem, dealing with the homeless population, creating more opportunities for them, getting them into more housing. When we first moved here, there was literally just tents on the off ramps, and I'm not seeing that anymore, which is fantastic, because when I look at places like San Diego, Houston, Texas, Chicago, this is becoming more and more of an issue. But I'm really proud of Seattle and Tacoma for how they've handled that. So safety wise, I never feel unsafe walking around downtown. I never feel unsafe walking through, Seattle, but that's kind of to each their own. So, you'll get that feel and that vibe of what makes you comfortable. Don't live and die by my word. That's just how we feel, being Midwest kids that moved out here. So if I were to really kind of break down maybe a quick pros and cons of living in Tacoma, I think it's really going to come down to all the outdoor activities from us. We found a really good home. We love Lake Sammamish up north. The only reason we go all the way up there though is because the water's really warm. We love all of the parks, Point Defiance, going to Owen Beach, all the parks that line Point Ruston. That's fantastic. Being close to the Cascades, being close to Mount Rainier, the Olympics, outdoors. If you are someone that loves to be in the outdoors, this is the spot. After 3 years, it has not lost its magic when it comes to the outdoors. Every minute is still just as cool, just as exciting as it was when we moved here and first saw the mountains. Also jobs, there's so many fantastic jobs out here. I have a lot of faith, and we're seeing it as we have moved more and more clients from YouTube out here. The job market is fantastic. The pay is great. The cost of living for the West Coast is a lot lower than pretty much any other city on the West Coast, other than maybe Portland, but I would much rather live here than Portland 1,000 times over again. That's my opinion. All of the things to do. you know, all of the museums, all of the parks, there's events, concerts, comedy shows. There's never not something to do. It's so different from where we came from. And after 3 years, I'm still just very, very grateful to have that. The summers here are also the most beautiful that you're ever gonna see in your entire life. They haven't lost their majestic sense. It's not been dulled on me still to this day. On the negative side, if I had to throw some things out there, you know, I think the weather is hard for a lot of people. So during that winter time, if you're gonna make the move, after 3 years, I would tell you like some good lamps, taking vitamin D, taking advantage of the days that it's nice out are gonna be critical just to be happy and live the life that you want. Traffic congestion really stinks during those high traffic hours, and you're gonna have to deal with that. It's hard to get around. And lastly, I think really just getting like used to living out here. The PNW is a completely different animal if you're not from here. So adjusting to that is gonna have its own little quirks. And you know, if you've lived in someplace like, let's say Tennessee your whole life, it's gonna be a little shocking. There are a lot of differences out here than in the Midwest or in the South. The East Coast, it's completely different. If I bring out here, like they love the beauty of it, but there's always like, oh, well, this is very different. So, you know, again, this is just my opinion after 3 years. Like if you're looking to make a move out here, give me a call. I'd be happy to guide you through the experience, help you to work through the things that like I didn't have somebody there to help me with, and ultimately make this a much easier experience for you than what I did. So obviously, you know, just looking at everything, talking about the location, breaking down the cost of living. What does employment look like? What is our quality of life? Education, safety, transportation, a little bit of pros and cons. We went over all that today in this video. If you have any questions more on this, feel free to reach out to me. My information is all in the pinned comment down there. And until next time, I cannot wait till you're out here so we can show you around.